Carl Jung identified 7 signs of an extremely rare personality type. And if you recognize even a few of these traits, you may belong to what I call the psychological elite. In decades of research, Jung discovered that fewer than 5% of people develop what he termed differentiated consciousness, a level of awareness and depth that most never reach. But here's the paradox. Those who possess this advanced form of consciousness often feel like outsiders their entire lives. Society convinces them that their intensity, their emotional depth, their refusal to accept shallow answers are flaws. Yet Jung realized the opposite is true. These traits aren't weaknesses. They are evolutionary upgrades, evidence of a mind and soul operating on the leading edge of human potential. And this is where most people misunderstand. You're not too much. The truth is, most of the world is too little for you. Jung saw that what feels like alienation is actually a marker of advanced psychological architecture. So join me as we dive into Jung's groundbreaking psychology and uncover the 7 definitive signs of rare personality types. If you find yourself in these patterns, then your difference is not a curse. It's a sign that you are carrying humanity's next step of evolution. The first sign is emotional depth that feels almost supernatural. Jung discovered something remarkable about emotional intensity. For rare individuals, emotions aren't just feelings, they're symphonies. Each one carries layers of meaning, vibrating like deep psychological resonances. You don't just feel sadness or joy, you embody the unspoken undercurrents in every interaction. You sense tension in a room before anyone says a word. You carry the weight of stories people don't even tell. Jung wanted us to understand that this isn't instability, it's emotional sophistication. When you feel deeply, you're not overreacting. You're tapping into what Jung called the objective psyche, the universal layers of human experience most people suppress. That's why others might accuse you of being too sensitive. But in truth, your psyche is wired for depth, not surface-level small talk. Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But for you, it goes further. Everything opens a doorway to insights others cannot see." The second sign is sacred curiosity and relentless questioning. Most people live what Jung described as unconscious lives. They accept the scripts handed down by culture without examination. But you can't help but dig deeper. You don't just ask what, you ask why. Why do people stay in relationships that diminish them? Why do we build systems that don't serve human flourishing? Why do we pretend shallow conversations count as meaningful connection? Jung would have recognized you as someone with an active thinking function, one that refuses to settle for surface explanations. He called this the transcendent function, the psychological ability to see beyond current limitations. And while others cling to the comfort of the status quo, you're already imagining what could be different, what could be more authentic, what could honor the full spectrum of human potential. But here's the challenge. Your questions often threaten people's illusions. They destabilize the defenses that keep others feeling safe in their limitations. That's why you might have been told you think too much, or you ask too many questions. In truth, your curiosity isn't a problem. It's sacred. It's the key to your growth, and it's the very trait that humanity has always needed to evolve. History's great innovators, philosophers, and reformers were the same kind of people, unable to ignore the deeper why behind everything. The third sign is the development of conscious independence. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Rare individuals have learned to do exactly this, not by luxury, but by necessity. Many of them face adversity earlier than others, which forces them to build a foundation of selfhood that isn't dependent on external validation. This is what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all the rejected parts of oneself. Independence, in this sense, is not rebellion or defensiveness. It is an achievement. It means you've discovered, through experience, that relying on others for your sense of worth is like standing on quicksand. So you built yourself from the ground up. You stood firm, often alone, and created an identity that no one else could take from you. Not through their opinion, not through their absence. Your solitude is not loneliness. It is sanctuary. It's the place where you remember who you are beneath all the roles and expectations. Jung believed this kind of self-knowledge is the foundation of psychological health, and those who cultivate it are not just surviving, they're becoming living examples of what true independence looks like. The fourth sign is what can only be described as heightened awareness, a kind of intuition that feels like a sixth sense. Jung revolutionized psychology when he recognized intuition as a legitimate psychological function. He described it as perception through the unconscious, a process that brings forth images, ideas, and solutions without deliberate reasoning. For rare personalities, this doesn't operate as a vague hunch. It is precise, powerful, and often impossible to ignore. You don't just listen to words, you read between them. You notice micro-expressions on people's faces, subtle energy shifts in a room, the words someone avoids more than the ones they speak. It's as if your mind is constantly processing invisible data, giving you an immediate sense of truth that others miss. Of course, this level of perception comes with its burdens. Jung warned that without boundaries, heightened awareness can become exhausting. You might find yourself absorbing everyone's emotions, carrying pain that doesn't belong to you, unconsciously becoming the therapist or healer for those around you. People feel seen by you, sometimes more deeply than they're comfortable with, and they unload their struggles into your space. Over time, this drains your energy if you haven't learned to protect it. Yet when managed wisely, this awareness becomes one of your greatest strengths. It allows you to navigate life with clarity, to avoid deception, and to uncover possibilities that others can't even imagine. The fifth sign is the unshakable craving for meaning. Jung famously wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and he meant it literally. For these rare individuals, meaning is not optional. It is survival. You cannot force yourself to live for shallow goals, empty recognition, or roles that feel inauthentic. You've probably tried to go along with society's expectations at some point, chasing external validation, pursuing the conventional milestones of success. But the results were always the same: emptiness, a sense of betrayal against your own nature, even symptoms of what Jung called neurosis. Your psyche simply refuses to let you stay inauthentic. For you, meaning isn't about luxury or prestige. It's about alignment. It's about knowing that your choices, your work, your relationships connect to something deeper. Without this, no achievement feels satisfying. No applause feels real. And while this makes you different from the majority, Jung believed it's precisely this refusal to settle for less that makes you a catalyst for evolution. By insisting on authenticity, you silently challenge others to look at their own lives and ask, are they living truthfully or just playing roles? In this way, your craving for meaning doesn't just serve you. It pushes human consciousness forward. There is also a quiet but important ripple effect. When you choose authenticity, you often disrupt systems built on conformity, shallow conversations, superficial relationships, soulless routines. They collapse around you because you refuse to participate in them. This sometimes isolates you, but it also attracts others who are secretly searching for the same depth. You become a mirror, reflecting both the discomfort of inauthentic living and the possibility of something greater. Jung recognized that individuals like you serve as living reminders that life is meant to be real, not rehearsed. The sixth sign appears when you repeatedly outgrow people and environments. Jung observed that true psychological growth often requires letting go. He described this as a process of psychological death and rebirth. You've probably experienced this firsthand. People who once felt like your closest companions no longer understand you. Places that once felt comfortable suddenly feel suffocating. This isn't because you've become difficult. It's because you've shed old layers of conditioning that no longer serve you. And those who still live within those layers don't know how to meet the version of you that has emerged. The tragedy is that many people want you to return to who you were because that version felt safer, more familiar, easier to handle. But Jung insisted that true evolution is irreversible. Once you see beyond the curtain of social programming, you cannot unsee it. The moment you awaken to your deeper self, the path back to conformity closes forever. That's why some people will resist your growth. They'll ask you to tone yourself down, to stop questioning so much, to be the person they used to know. But you can't go back, and you shouldn't, because every time you step into a new layer of authenticity, you embody what Jung described as individuation in action, the constant unfolding of your true self. Growth of this kind can feel lonely, but it's also liberating. Each time you outgrow a situation, you create space for something truer, richer, more aligned with who you really are. And each time you refuse to shrink back into an outdated version of yourself, you prove that your evolution is not negotiable. This courage to keep moving forward, even when it means leaving people or environments behind, is one of the clearest signs of psychological rarity. The seventh and final sign is what I call transformational presence. Jung once wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Rare individuals carry this quality everywhere they go. Simply by being authentic, you change the atmosphere around you. When people talk to you, they feel seen in a way they rarely experience. You don't just hear words. You tune into what those words are carrying, the emotions behind them, the truth they reveal or conceal. You don't rush to judgment or offer shallow fixes. Instead, you create space where truth can surface naturally. Jung understood that this kind of presence is itself a form of healing. People who carry it often become anchors for others, providing stability in chaos, clarity in confusion, and safety in vulnerability. But there's a cost. Many with this gift give too freely, forgetting to ask for the same kind of space in return. Over time, they drain themselves, unconsciously falling into what Jung hinted at as a helper's shadow. The tendency to sacrifice one's own well-being in the process of carrying others. The lesson here isn't to stop caring, but to practice discernment. Your presence has the power to transform, but it must also be guarded, shared intentionally, and nourished by relationships that replenish you. Jung spent much of his career studying people like this, those he considered differentiated individuals, and he noticed that their growth often unfolds in distinct stages. In the beginning, there is the unconscious outsider, someone who feels different but doesn't yet understand why. At this stage, people often try to mask their depth in order to fit in, wearing what Jung called a rigid persona. The cost is enormous. They suppress their authentic nature, and in doing so, lose their vitality. Eventually, many progress to what Jung described as the awakening individual. Here, the difference that once felt like a curse begins to look like a gift. You start to recognize your traits not as flaws, but as strengths. This is when shadow integration begins, the process of reclaiming the parts of yourself you were taught to reject. In this stage, boundaries become essential. You stop apologizing for your depth and begin to protect it, surrounding yourself with people who can meet you with authenticity. And then there is the individuated stage, where the rare personality finally integrates all these traits into a coherent whole. Here, your life becomes aligned with your purpose. You no longer carry your gifts as burdens, but as tools. You live consciously, aware of your impact, aware of your responsibility. At this stage, you don't just transform yourself, you become a catalyst for others to awaken as well. But Jung warned of the dangers that come with such rarity. When your traits set you apart, it's easy to slip into the shadows of superiority, believing your gifts make you better than others, or into the shadows of messianic thinking, believing it's your duty to fix or awaken everyone you meet, or even into martyrdom, thinking that suffering is the inevitable price of your depth. Jung's insight was that these shadows must be made conscious. Only by recognizing them can you prevent your greatest strengths from becoming prisons. Relationships are one of the clearest mirrors for these dynamics. Rare individuals tend to attract three types of people: those who want to possess their light, those who want to dim it, and the rare few who can truly match it. The possessors are unconsciously drawn to your depth, but they haven't done their own work. They love your energy, but not your full humanity. The dimmers feel threatened by your intensity and constantly ask you to be less. But the matchers, those who have walked their own path of growth, are the ones who can stand beside you without diminishing or consuming your light. They recognize your rarity while honoring their own. Jung believed that cultivating this discernment is one of the most important tasks of psychologically advanced individuals. The truth is, being rare isn't easy. It means loneliness at times. It means walking paths few others even know exist. It means carrying insights and sensitivities that the world isn't always ready to receive. But Jung believed that individuals like you are essential for the evolution of humanity. You are bridges between the unconscious and the conscious, between what is and what could be. Your depth, your refusal to accept shallow answers, your insistence on authenticity, these are the very traits that expand what it means to be human. So, if you've recognized yourself in even half of these signs, you are not broken. You are not too much. You are not a problem to be fixed. You are rare. You are evidence of evolution in motion. Jung believed that people like you embody the future of consciousness. And while it requires courage to live this truth, the reward is a life of authenticity, purpose, and transformation. The world doesn't need you to shrink. It doesn't need you to silence your questions, to hide your sensitivity, or dilute your intensity. It needs you to stand fully in who you are. Because as Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And when you accept that privilege fully, you don't just change yourself, you change the world.